When I asked her to wish me luck for my interview, she snorted, "Luck won't fix you. They'll see right through you like everyone else does." I just nodded, but when she found out who hired me, she nearly collapsed. For the last year, my life has been about one thing: rebuilding. I used to be a senior analyst at a big investment firm. I had the title, the salary, the whole package. And then the company restructured. My whole division was eliminated. I was laid off. It wasn't personal, just business. But it felt like a total failure. I spent a few months in a tailspin trying to figure out my next move. During that time, I was supported by my girlfriend of 2 years, Catherine. We live in an apartment that I own, a place I bought back when my career was flying high. When I lost my job, we made an agreement. I would use my savings to cover the mortgage and our shared bills while I figured out my next venture. It was a temporary arrangement, a bridge to get me to the other side. I was grateful for her patience. I didn't realize she was keeping a detailed record of it, and that her patience had a price. Catherine works as a junior executive at a massive, prestigious wealth management firm called Sterling Thorne. It's an old money institution, the kind of place where your last name matters more than your last performance review. Her boss, a man named Alistair Croft, is a legend in the industry, and Catherine worships him. She is obsessed with the world of status, power, and perception. As the months went on and I was still working on building a small, independent consulting practice from our spare bedroom, her attitude started to change. Her support curdled into a kind of weary condescension. She'd make little comments about my project, as if it were a hobby like building model ships. She'd sigh dramatically when I was on a late-night call with a potential client. She started to see me not as a partner in a temporary rough patch, but as a charity case, a weight holding her back from the glamorous life she felt she deserved. I was trying. I was working 80-hour weeks, slowly building a client base. But it wasn't fast enough for her. The final straw, the moment the entire foundation of our relationship turned to dust, came yesterday morning. I had an interview, not just any interview. It was for a newly created director of strategy position at a rival firm, a younger, more aggressive company that was making waves in the industry. It was a long shot, but it was the first real opportunity I'd had in a year to get back to the level I was at before. I was nervous, but hopeful. I put on my best suit. As I was adjusting my tie in the mirror, Catherine walked into the room, already dressed for her own important day at Sterling Thorne. "Wish me luck," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't even look at me. She was busy checking her reflection in the window. She let out a short, sharp, dismissive sound, a snort. "Luck won't fix you," she said, her voice dripping with a casual, devastating cruelty. "They'll see right through you, just like everyone else does." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just an insult. It was a summary judgment of my character, my ambition, my entire year of struggle. She wasn't just kicking me when I was down. She was grinding her heel on my neck. I didn't say anything. I just stood there looking at her reflection in the glass. And in that moment, the man who loved her, the man who was grateful for her support, just ceased to exist. He was replaced by someone else, someone colder, more focused, and infinitely more dangerous. I just nodded, a slow, deliberate nod of understanding. "You might be right," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. She finally turned to look at me, a smug little smirk on her face. She thought she had broken me. She thought her words had confirmed my own deepest fears. She had no idea she had just handed me a weapon. She had no idea that her casual cruelty was the fuel I needed to burn her entire world to the ground. I walked out of that apartment a different man. The nervousness I felt about the interview was gone, replaced by a laser-like focus. Catherine's words, meant to shatter my confidence, had instead forged it into something unbreakable. She thought they would see right through me. Good. I was about to show her what was on the other side. The interview was at the headquarters of Northgate Capital, a firm that was the boogeyman in Catherine's world. They were the disruptors, the ones poaching clients and talent from old guard firms like Sterling Thorne. I wasn't just interviewed by a hiring manager. I was led into a large corner office. Sitting behind the desk was Marcus Thorne, the CEO. The Thorne from Sterling Thorne. He had left the family firm 10 years ago in a bitter dispute with his older brother and had built Northgate into its biggest rival. He was a shark, a legend, and he did not suffer fools. He had my resume in his hand, but he didn't look at it. He just looked at me. "So," he said, his voice a low growl, "you used to be one of them. Why do you want to be one of us?" The old me would have given a polished corporate answer. The new me told the truth. I told him about being laid off, about the brutal reality of a changing industry. I told him about my year in the wilderness, building my own small firm, learning the business from the ground up, not from the top down. I didn't talk about my successes. I talked about my failures and what I had learned from them. And then I laid out my vision. I didn't just answer his questions. I presented a full-scale, unsolicited strategic analysis of Northgate's position in the market, complete with a detailed plan to exploit the weaknesses of Sterling Thorne. I had been working on this for months as part of my consulting work. It was my masterpiece. For an hour, I held the attention of one of the most powerful men in finance. When I was finished, he was silent for a long moment. He just stared at me, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. They didn't see what they had, did they? He said. It wasn't a question. The director position is yours if you want it. But I have a better idea. He offered me a job that wasn't on the table, a new role created just for me, Vice President of Special Projects. I would report directly to him. My only job would be to identify and attack the vulnerabilities of his competition. My primary target, Sterling Thorne. I accepted on the spot, but I had one condition. I told him I needed 2 weeks of complete discretion. I explained that my personal situation was complicated, and I needed time to extricate myself before my new role was announced. He agreed, intrigued by the request. I walked out of that building with a job that was more than a job. It was a weapon, and I was going to aim it right at the heart of Catherine's world. I went home and played the part of the defeated man. I told Catherine the interview had been a disaster. I told her she had been right. They had seen right through me. The change in her was immediate. The condescension was replaced by a cloying, suffocating pity. She patted my shoulder and told me not to worry, that my little consulting business was cute, and that she would be happy to support me until I found my footing. She was so high on her own perceived superiority that she was completely blind. For the next 2 weeks, I was a ghost. I spent my days at a rented office space, working directly with Marcus Thorne and his team, preparing for my official start. We were planning a major move, a corporate raid on Sterling Thorne's most profitable division. At night, I would go home and play the part of the beaten man, listening to Catherine talk about her brilliant boss, Alistair Croft, and the upcoming annual Sterling Thorne Foundation Gala, the most important event of her year. She made it very clear that I was not invited to the gala. It's a very high-level event, babe, she had said, not even looking at me. It's for the major players. You would just feel out of place. I understand, I had said, my voice full of faked humility. The day before the gala, I made my final moves. I went to my bank and moved the majority of my savings, including the substantial signing bonus from Northgate, into a new private account. I then met with a real estate lawyer. I had him draft a formal notice, giving Catherine 30 days to vacate my apartment. I also had him draw up a detailed invoice for her share of the household expenses for the past year, which she had conveniently forgotten to pay since I was laid off. The night of the gala, Catherine was a whirlwind of excitement. She spent hours getting ready. As she was about to leave, she looked at me, sitting on the couch in my sweatpants, and gave me a look of profound pity. "Don't wait up," she said. "It's going to be a late night of networking." "Have fun," I said, smiling up at her. "Make some good connections." She walked out the door, completely unaware that the biggest connection of the night was going to be the one that severed her from my life. Permanently. Update 2. The Sterling Thorne Foundation Gala was held at a grand old museum, the kind of place with marble floors and ceilings so high they get their own weather. Catherine had been talking about this night for months. It was her chance to shine, to network with the titans of her industry, and most importantly, to impress her boss, Alistair Croft. She arrived, I'm told, looking like $1 million. She was working the room, laughing with senior partners, and making sure she was seen by all the right people. She was in her element. The main event of the evening was a speech by Alistair Croft, followed by a major announcement about the future of the firm. He took the stage to thunderous applause. He spoke for 20 minutes about tradition, about legacy, about the strength of Sterling Thorne. And then he came to the big announcement. "As we look to the future," he said, his voice booming through the hall, "we know that our greatest strength is our people, and it is my distinct pleasure to announce the promotion of our newest partner." Catherine was practically vibrating. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She was sure the promotion was hers, but Alistair didn't say her name. He announced the promotion of a colleague of hers, a man she considered her inferior. I heard from a friend who was there that the look on her face was a mixture of shock and fury. But the night was still young. Alistair wasn't finished. And now, he said, it is my honor to introduce a very special guest, a man who represents the future of our industry, a true visionary. Please welcome the CEO of Northgate Capital, Mr. Marcus Thorne. A wave of gasps went through the room. Marcus Thorne, their biggest rival, was here at their gala. He walked onto the stage, shook Alistair's hand, and took the microphone. He was charming. He was ruthless. And he held the entire room in the palm of his hand. He spoke about innovation, about disruption, about the need for new blood and new ideas. The old ways of doing business are dying, he said, his eyes sweeping the crowd. And at Northgate, we are not just adapting to the future, we are building it. And to lead that charge, to spearhead our most aggressive expansion yet, I have brought on a man with the sharpest strategic mind I have ever encountered. A man your own industry cast aside, and whom we were more than happy to pick up. He paused, letting the tension build. Catherine was standing in the crowd, completely bewildered. Please join me in welcoming the new Vice President of Special Projects at Northgate Capital, Marcus Thorne declared, Mr. David Miller. And then I walked out onto the stage. I was wearing a custom-tailored suit that had cost more than her car. I looked confident. I looked powerful. And I looked like I belonged there more than anyone in that room. I saw her. She was standing about 30 feet from the stage. Her face was completely white. Her mouth was hanging open. She looked like she had seen a ghost. The woman who had told me just 2 weeks ago that luck wouldn't fix me was now watching me be introduced as the right-hand man to her industry's most feared and respected leader. I shook Marcus Thorne's hand, took the microphone, and looked out at the sea of stunned faces. I didn't even glance at Catherine. She was no longer a factor in my equation. Thank you, Marcus, I said, my voice calm and clear. It's an honor to be here. I have to say, it's good to be back. I look forward to showing all of you what I'm capable of. The room was in an uproar. People were whispering, pointing. Catherine's colleagues were all staring at her, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. Her carefully constructed world of lies and condescension had just been publicly and spectacularly demolished. She didn't just look foolish, she looked like a liability. And in her world, there is no greater sin. Final update. The rest of the gala was a blur of handshakes and congratulations. I was surrounded by the very people Catherine had been so desperate to impress. They weren't just being polite, they were actively trying to network with me. I was no longer the failed boyfriend. I was the new power player in town. Catherine tried to approach me once. She pushed through the crowd, her face a mess of tears and rage. David, we need to talk, she hissed. I just looked at her, my face a mask of polite confusion. I'm sorry, I said, as if I didn't recognize her. Have we met? One of Marcus Thorne's security guys gently but firmly escorted her away. That was the last time I spoke to her in person. When she finally got home to the apartment in the early hours of the morning, she found the locks had been changed. Taped to the door was the 30-day eviction notice and the invoice for the money she owed me. The next few weeks were a slow, satisfying demolition of her professional life. The story of what had happened at the gala spread through the financial world like a wildfire. She became a joke. The woman who was so arrogant and blind that she had no idea her unambitious boyfriend was about to become her biggest professional threat. Her boss, Alistair Croft, was furious. Not at me, but at her. She had made him and the entire firm look foolish. She was a walking, talking symbol of Sterling Thorne's inability to recognize and retain talent. She was put on a meaningless, dead-end project and effectively sidelined. She tried to fight the eviction, of course. Her lawyer sent a series of threatening letters. My lawyer sent back a single devastating response. It included a copy of the deed to the apartment, a detailed accounting of her financial arrears, and a sworn affidavit from a colleague of hers who had overheard her making disparaging remarks about me at work. The letters stopped. The best part of my revenge, however, was professional. My first project at Northgate was to lead a hostile takeover of a smaller firm that Sterling Thorne had been trying to acquire for months. I used my insider knowledge of their slow, bureaucratic process to outmaneuver them at every turn. We closed the deal in 6 weeks. It was a massive public victory for Northgate and a humiliating defeat for Sterling Thorne. Alistair Croft's division, the one Catherine worked in, was directly responsible for the failure. I heard through a former colleague that Alistair called Catherine into his office the day after the deal was announced. He didn't yell. He just calmly explained that her presence at the firm was a constant and painful reminder of their biggest strategic failure in a decade. He told her that her judgment was fundamentally flawed and that there was no future for her at Sterling Thorne. She was fired. I saw her once, a few months later. I was leaving a meeting and she was walking down the street carrying a box of what looked like office supplies. She had lost the polished, confident look she always wore. She just looked tired and defeated. She saw me and her eyes filled with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. I just nodded politely and got into the town car that was waiting for me. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it to be honest. She had told me with her words and her actions that she thought I was worthless. I just decided to show her and the rest of the world what my actual value was. She built her life on a foundation of perception and status. I just provided a reality check. And reality, as it turns out, can be a very brutal, very satisfying thing.